Before we start, just a quick reminder. The views and content shared on this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and are not a substitute for professional advice. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. I'm super excited about this. Today we're going to talk about communication styles, and the 4 communication styles are passive, aggressive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. And the goal is assertiveness. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you more about each of them.
I was just about to say, those names are so unique.
Yeah, passive, I know, right?
Aggressive, passive aggressive. And there's this other one, assertive.
Yep. Yeah, assertive is the goal. So we are going to break all of these down and also talk about what drives them underneath the surface. So what are the beliefs? It's really a lot about emotion regulation, whether or not you're able to regulate and process your emotions. Spoiler, with assertiveness, you can process your emotions and not react onto other people and put your stuff on other people. Whereas with the other 3 communication styles, you are emotionally dysregulated. And so those feelings aren't processed and they have to go somewhere. So we're going to talk about where they go and how that shows up in this style. And we're also going to talk about the barriers to assertiveness for the first 3. And then for assertiveness, what allows you to be assertive. So as you are listening, I want you to be thinking about your own communication style. Obviously, you are going to be thinking about other people as well who maybe have passive aggressive or passive aggressive. That's fine too. In another episode, I can talk about how do you respond to each of these styles. But until then, we do have the boundaries episode that has a ton around assertiveness and setting boundaries, and especially dealing with difficult, tricky dynamics. So highly recommend that one. We'll put a link to that. I don't know if we can put a link to that, but we'll definitely put a little reference to that in the show notes so you know which episode it is. All right, let's get into it.
Let's go.
The first one that we're going to talk about is passive communication. So what does passive communication look like? I'm going to have you tell me your initial thoughts, Katie.
Oh, okay. I get to be the audience and I get to respond. Okay.
Yeah. So when you think about passive communication, or in your experience, when you're passive or when other people are passive, what does that look like?
Beating the fuck around the bush.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm guilty. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings, so you say things far too kindly, far too soft.
Yeah.
You maybe make something as a suggestion instead of a statement. You don't really hold a boundary. You more just communicate mild displeasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Yep. So with passive communication, that is when we don't express our true thoughts or feelings or preferences or needs if they might ruffle feathers or upset people. And not expressing your true thoughts or feelings might mean that you do express the thoughts and feelings, but yes, you make them way milder. So you're not actually expressing the true intensity or true impact of what's going on. And you're not setting a strong boundary or a strong request. It's really watered down to, oh, maybe do you think if it's not too much that you could do this? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That can also look like pretending things are fine when it's not speaking up or advocating for yourself, saying yes to everything, even when you don't agree, or saying yes doesn't take care of you, right? So getting out of your seat when we're passive, it's pretty easy to get pulled out of our seat because we don't want to upset people. So if someone asks us to do something for them, or we feel like we need to help them feel better, but we don't have it in us, we're going to do it anyway and overextend and get out of our seat. It's also avoidance of conflict, difficult or emotional conversations, people pleasing, keeping them happy. And often when we're passive, we might even see like ourselves get smaller. So our posture is like more closed or like hunched over, more protective. And how does being passive impact the person who's being passive? So that passive communicator. So you are more likely to be taken advantage of. And like I said, you are more likely to overextend yourself or over caretake. That can lead to this codependence of abandoning yourself to take care of someone else. You don't hold boundaries to protect or care for yourself. Keeping the peace ruins your peace. It might be easier in the moment because you're avoiding that conflict or that discomfort or that person's response. But in the long run, it sets a precedent that they expect that you're going to overextend. They expect that they can walk all over you. And when that happens, it actually makes it way harder in the long run. I was talking to a client about that this week of she's dealing with some situations at work. And unfortunately, this is a new freaking job, the poor thing. And she left her last job because it was really toxic. This job is better, but it's still not good. There's some things that have happened, some reorgs that have happened, and just a lot of responsibilities being put onto her plate. And she doesn't want the responsibilities. She doesn't want to do that. And, they're telling her, well, you could be in a more leadership position. You have what it takes. This is such a good opportunity for you, And she's like, but I don't want this. This is not an opportunity for me because this is not the type of career growth I want. I actually just want to be able to come to work, be told what to do and go home. Like I don't want to be in a leadership position. And she's done all this work on passive communication to be more assertive. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm here again. I was here in my last job. The dynamics in my family are what led to me to get stuck in this passive communication in my last job. And I left that to prioritize myself. And now I'm in this job and I know I need to have these hard conversations and advocate for myself, but I'm exhausted and I don't want to do it. And I told her, well, here's the deal. In life, we can't decide that we're never going to have to do uncomfortable things. That's just not a thing. But what we can decide is that I'm only going to do this when necessary, and I'm not going to put myself in a position where I need to do this regularly. That this is an exception to the rule. So in life, you don't get to choose if feeling discomfort and doing things that make you feel uncomfortable, whether or not you have that, because we're going to have that. It's just your two choices are, is this going to be an exception or a rule? So if you want it to be an exception that you have to advocate for yourself, you want that to be rare, then you need to advocate for yourself right fucking now when this is happening. Oof. Because if you do not do that, then it's going to become the rule where, guess what? You're getting walked all over and now it's harder in the long run. And so now you are back to where you were. And what this probably looks like is you need to have an uncomfortable conversation. You're going to see what's going to happen. If it doesn't go well and you can't continue at this job, then we're going to start looking for other jobs. And does it fucking suck to look for another job? Yeah. Who wants to do that? No one wants to do that. But do you want this to be the exception or the rule? You want it to be the exception. So if this job isn't going to work out for you, then go to another one so that you're not here again.
That reminds me of, so we were talking about, different podcast episodes that we're going to do in the future. And that reminds me of my friend who was kind of going back and forth between like, gosh, there's this situation that I'm dealing with that should I stay in my seat in terms of I'm exhausted and I don't know if I have enough energy to advocate for this thing that I believe in, or should I do the thing that I believe in? And it's like when you are trying to become more self-centered, staying in your seat actually requires you to kind of not get out of your seat, but do exhaust yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're saying is it's like, it's a short-term exhaustion of, okay, I'm going to have to get uncomfortable.
Right.
And advocate for myself right now so that this doesn't become a regular thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're absolutely going to dive deep on that in a future episode, which will be super great. But yeah, it's not mutually exclusive, I guess, in that particular case.
Totally right. Yeah. It can feel like it's an either or, but that's why we're going to talk about it, because I think it is complex to try to figure this out. And staying in your seat can mean so many, like you can stay in your seat in so many different ways. So it's like, am I going to stay in my seat in terms of my energy, or am I going to stay in my seat in terms of my values, or like what,
Yeah.
And so I love that question. So I'm excited to dive in. So stay tuned. You'll hear that in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one.
Great. Oh, when we're passive, we can become resentful over time. Uh-huh. Katie, I just heard you. It was like, tell me your thoughts about that. I was going to explain it, but you can just share your experience.
Yeah. God, it's awful. I don't know. I'm just like, I think there are, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I have been in situations with people who do not receive communication well. And who do not receive direct communication well. And maybe that falls under assertive. We'll find out soon. I'll find out soon. But they don't receive direct.
Spoiler. It does. Yes.
So they don't receive direct communication well. And me as a recovering people pleaser, I adjusted my communication style to be more palatable to those people. And unfortunately, when I was more palatable, they didn't fucking hear me. Or they said they heard me. And because it wasn't, I don't want to say met with force.
It was
because
like watered down.
Yeah, because I was gentle about it and it was like kindly communicated. Not that you shouldn't be kind, but just that it was like, hey, like if you could consider that this impacts me and like I would really appreciate if you could do this, that, or the other and it would be nice. Like, then yeah, nothing was ever done. Yeah. And so then I just keep communicating over and over and over. And I keep saying, hey, this would be really, really helpful. Yes. And then you start getting a little bit more frustrated. Hey, I really need this. Okay. And then you start getting a little more frustrated. Hey, this isn't happening. I really need this. And then eventually it's like, okay, well, you don't fucking listen to me at all. Yeah. I've been saying this from the rooftops for, however long. And it's like, by the time that the thing is actually done, it's like, okay, well, you weren't willing to do it the first 12 million times that we talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It's like, you don't hear me,
For sure. And I also want to say, I mean, if you've listened to the ego series, you know that even if you're assertive, right? So like sometimes, I mean, being passive, you're not being as clear or direct in your communication. So, that's not as effective in getting your message across for sure. And with some people, if they are very defended, if they have a lot of primitive defense mechanisms at play, even if you were assertive, they weren't going to hear you, Yeah. I had a client who I was talking with the other day, and she said one of her exes said that he felt blindsided by the end of their relationship. And she had been begging him for 10 years to go to therapy and telling him, literally she said begging, like on her knees, like, like really, yeah.
I want to cry for her. Oh my God.
I know. And then when she said, I can't do this anymore, I have to end the relationship, he said he felt blindsided and there's this whole smear campaign against her in the community. And
fuck directly off.
No, seriously.
The anger that I have towards that.
I know, right? Isn't it? It's like so much easier for us to get angry on other people's behalf, but on our behalf, we're like, well, they have trauma, so like, we can't be that upset.
Yeah, I don't know. I've really tapped into my anger in the last few years, but
love it. And she said, I find myself gaslighting myself sometimes where because they act as if I'm this bad person who blindsided them, sometimes I'm like, well, did I?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said to her, I was like, was he blindsided or did he deliberately close his eyes every time you tried to warn him that there was issues incoming and you wanted to deal with them and you waited 10 fucking years. I mean, you were patient AF.
Oh my God.
And this person was, taking care of him emotionally. He was really emotionally dysregulated. Whole fucking thing. Anyway.
I just want to say women really do the most. I know that there are men that do the most too, but they're...
I mean, the way our culture is set up, like, if men are doing the most, it's because they really, really fucking want to, because they don't have to.
Or they're in a homosexual relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. My little heteronormativity bias was right there. You're like, oh, or homosexual. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Back to passive communication. I'm like, where are we? So, yep, we become resentful over time. Understandably, it's understandable that we would become resentful over time, but it's also we have some responsibility in that resentment, right? Because we weren't as direct as we should have been or as we could have been if we wanted to be more effective. And the resentment can come because sometimes when people are passive, so I was in a relationship with someone who was super passive. I didn't realize that they were passive because they communicated things to me. So I thought, oh, well, they're being really direct. But they were passive in that they literally didn't tell me certain things that they were thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
And that was impacting them. Even when I was soliciting, okay, these choices that we're making in our relationship, these decisions, is this what you really want? I want to make sure. And him actively saying yes and like assuring me and encouraging me, yes, I want to make these decisions. And then finding out after the relationship ended that he developed resentment for me because he was angry about the choices we made together that were his idea.
You know what? You said that at the beginning of talking about passive, and I think that's a really important distinction to highlight again, is that it's not just being meek in communication, it's also not communicating or lying about your communication.
Yes.
Lying for the sake of keeping the peace. It's not like you're trying to lie for the sake of misleading someone. It's like you're literally trying to keep the peace. You're trying to appease the person, or even, okay, well, I love this person and it's not that much of an inconvenience for me this one time, but it's not in alignment with me, right? And so then you start making concessions over and over and over that actually aren't in alignment. And it's like, oh, actually, wait, I also resent that. You're the person who's passively communicating.
Totally. And in this situation, it wasn't even concessions that I was asking for. This person wanted me to stop working so that I could get a break because I was burnt out from nonprofit work and wanted me to stop working and to take care of me. And for 3 months, I resisted that and said, I don't really feel comfortable with that. And mostly because I don't really feel like I can trust. But I thought it was a me thing that I couldn't trust, not that I was actually picking up that he's not trustworthy, which is what it ended up being. And so for 3 months, he kept being like, no, I want to take care of you. And then it ended up that he resented me for that. It was just such a weird thing. So sometimes the people pleasing is this twisted, we're pleasing people from the past, not even the person in front of us. Because the way he interacted with me sometimes, looking back, and in the moment I remember being like, something's off, and I would bring it up with him. But looking back and seeing things more clearly with the distance, I can see that there had been people in his life who he couldn't be direct with because they would get reactive and upset. And he kind of like projected that onto me.
Yeah.
And even though my behavior and my communication was indicating that that's not how I was at all. So I think a lot of the times these communication styles can just be habit. Like sometimes it is, oh, well, this person, I feel like I have to be passive because they can't take direct communication. And that was probably true at one point, and that's how you then got into the habit of being passive. And now you're passive with everyone, even if they're safe and would have been fine.
Yes. And I have to practice this myself when I am interacting with someone new or that I'm maybe developing and growing a relationship for. It's almost like you kind of go through an experience checklist of, okay, if we have our first conflict or whatnot, I have to remind myself, hey, be direct, communicate very clearly. These are the healthy patterns that you want to exude and, maintain within your lifestyle, and show up like how you want. And if they don't receive them, okay, well, then you adjust from there. And the adjustment, what should be the adjustment is, oh, well, if they're not healthy to receive that information, then I probably shouldn't, continue to interact with them.
Yeah.
Previously, what my, pattern was, okay, well, we'll become a little bit more passive, or we'll become a little bit softer, or that sort of thing. But show up how it is that you want your relationships to look like and go from there. And if it's not lining up with that, well, then the relationship ain't for you. Friendship, romantic partner, whatever it is, coworkers, etc.
Right.
But every new person that you interact with, you have to remove the old template, the ways that you've always done things. You can't apply that to an entirely new person and be like, oh yeah, well, I've always experienced that people don't receive direct communication well, therefore I'm going to be passive and meek with everybody. You can't do that.
Right.
You have to start fresh and say, oh, well, this is a new person. I'm going to show up as my healthy self.
Right. Right. And to do that, you have to be able to recognize your communication styles, which is why you're basically marketing the episode for us.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. Yeah, totally. So yeah, with this person, he definitely became resentful. And there was also this desire that he had that he actually communicated directly, ironically, in the beginning of the relationship, where he said, I want you to just know when I'm upset. I don't want to have to tell you. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that because that's not healthy. That's codependent. And I'm not going to keep trying to read your mind or pay attention to your little cues and be hypervigilant. So if that doesn't work for you, that I'm not going to do that, then this is not the relationship for you. And he was like, okay. And then during the relationship toward the end, he would get upset. And I think the passivity is part of this because it's like, I don't want to have to directly communicate with you. So I want you to just know somehow. And then the resentment comes when, because he expected me to notice when something was wrong, and I didn't do that, then he's building up this resentment and I don't even know he's upset.
Yeah. Well, I feel like those people are also really good at hiding it too. Because they've kind of had to be. Like their entire life has been a performance. I don't mean that in a judgmental way.
Yeah, they might even be hiding it from themselves because maybe they believe that, well, I don't know about this situation, but I think they could be hiding it from themselves, like in terms of passive communication, because in the earlier situation I was talking about with the taking care of me financially, I think that there could have been these beliefs that he had from something, I don't know, that, oh, well, I'm the man. I'm supposed to take care of her.
That's a very American culture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, and another way that we can become resentful when we're chronically passive is that we also, like, we're sacrificing ourselves, right? Because we're not expressing our needs and we're not fully saying and taking a stand for ourselves that this is what I want. And so since we're neglecting ourselves and like sacrificing ourselves for them, then that might actually make us feel like, oh, we're so good, right? Like I'm sacrificing, I'm so loyal. And then over time, when that isn't reciprocated, we get pissed, we get resentful. But the thing is that it's kind of on us because we chose to abandon ourselves. And we actually just need to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves.
There was something that I read recently that this reminds me of, and I'm going to fuck it up. I'm sorry, but it's like,
just give us the gist.
Yeah. The gist is it was talking about this couple, like generic couple within a relationship where the woman is doing like all the things and it's an abusive relationship. The guy is not treating her well in this example. And this third party comes in and is like, dude, stop treating her like shit. And the guy is like, well, she treats me like a fucking king. So clearly I'm not that bad. And then the third party is like, she's treating you how she wants you to treat her. She's showing up for you, hoping that by being good and by loving you well and by giving everything that you could possibly need or want, that you'll give her even a shred of that back.
It's so sad.
It is so sad.
We've been there where
We
it's
have.
like, oh my
But
gosh.
That's I don't know. I feel like that's an underlying thing too, is that we hope that in being easy, the person that we're with will be easy back. And that,
Look how not selfish I am. Look how thoughtful I am.
Yeah, maybe the golden rule, they'll treat me how I want to be treated because I'm treating them how they should want to be treated.
Yeah. It's a lot about earning value and worth, I think, too. It's sad.
Yeah. Which
sad. And we're saying this having been there ourselves and still working through it to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So chronic passivity can also lead to us perceiving ourselves or thinking of ourselves as a victim. And that's because we're martyring ourselves. We're saying, I give everything and I get nothing in return. I'm the one who's always overlooked, mistreated, or used. And so there's no judgment on ending up in any of these communication styles because, I mean, just the little bit that Katie and I have referenced about the culture that we live in, women are more likely to be expected to be passive and men are more likely to be expected to be aggressive.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then resentment can build and then it's kind of like pressure building and then you explode and you can become aggressive or passive aggressive. So we can kind of swing back and forth between these communication styles. I'm going to talk a little bit about what are the dynamics that drive passive communication. Emotional dysregulation, not knowing how to process your emotions. With passive communication, if you are using that, you are coping with these unprocessed emotions because you don't know how to process them yourself with internalization, meaning that you suppress what you're experiencing, right? Those emotions don't go anywhere. They stay with you. They stay internal and you suppress them. You push them away. The social strategy here in passive communication is a belief that if I stay quiet, I'll avoid rejection, I'll avoid abandonment, I'll avoid conflict, I'll be good. And then the belief that you come to internalize about yourself when you use passive communication chronically is the other person matters, I don't matter. And then last, we are going to just talk about, well, what are the barriers to assertiveness? And as we talk through these, if you have identified, oh yeah, passive communication, I hang out there sometimes and I want to work on it. Listen as I'm talking about the barriers to assertiveness and what resonates for you, because you can work on each of these barriers and it can help you become more assertive. So, lack of clarity of self. Sounds like the centered framework.
That centered framework piece, that is from 2 weeks ago. Go check out that episode, of course, if you
definitely
dive deeper into understanding yourself.
So, yay. All right. So, barrier to assertiveness for passive, if you engage in passive communication, is this lack of clarity of self. So, how does that show up when you're passive? It's uncertainty about your preferences, your values, or your identity makes it hard to speak up. And I have worked with so many people. This has never happened to me, luckily. I'm pretty clear about what I want. Like, I've always been really clear about what I want. But a lot of the people that I've worked with, when they've been passive chronically for decades, sometimes they actually don't know what they want anymore because they're so used to deferring to other people that there's no point in even considering what they might want. And so when we start working together and I'm like, what makes you happy? Like, what do you enjoy? They don't know.
Wow.
And so that's one of the things that you can work on, even as small as, okay, what do I want for dinner? Or like, what are the flavors that I enjoy or the colors? Like, you can even start small. Another barrier is fear of abandonment, rejection, or conflict. And staying silent feels safer than risking disconnection. And this relates to emotion regulation and needs ownership, which are two of our pillars. Another barrier is inability to tolerate emotional discomfort. which obviously is related to emotion regulation as well. And so in passive communication, this looks like avoidance of guilt, avoidance of tension, avoiding others' disappointment, and that overrides self-expression. Not owning your needs, which is related to the pillar of needs ownership. Your unclear or unacknowledged needs result in over-accommodation or silent suffering when you're passive. Investing in one-sided relationships. That is related to the pillar of reciprocity in relationships. And when you're passive, you prioritize being liked over being real. And that reinforces the imbalance and the lack of reciprocity and that it's one-sided. 3 more barriers. Weak ego and false self. Your identity is shaped by people-pleasing, perfectionism, or the approval-seeking self. And this relates to ego awareness. Go listen to the ego series for sure. I mean, like, I feel like that's now core curriculum.
For real, that entire thing needs to be on repeat and everyone.
Have it on in the background when you sleep.
For real. All people over for a dinner party. What's that sound?
That? And I'm like, object relations.
Why are the names so confusing?
I know, right? Did you want to say anything else? I want to make sure.
No.
Okay.
Just envisioning the dinner party.
No, I love it. I love you. This is great. Happy to have you. You know, this is why we are great as besties, because when you're all over the place, I can rein you in. And when I'm all over the place, you can rein me in. And the selfies have heard both of us in these situations. So I'm a dom today.
When we're both all over the place, we just take the L and we move on. We come back a couple days later.
When we're both all over the place, we have a 3-hour episode that we somehow have to edit down into an hour and a half. Oh my God.
And then we follow it up with an 11-minute episode that we never release.
Oh yeah. Where all that Katie said was, "What's enmeshment?" That was all she said. She was like a zombie the whole time. She's like dead. And then all of a sudden she's like, "What's enmeshment?" And she said it like that too. It was like, "What's enmeshment?"
I said wait first. I said wait.
Okay,
what's enmeshment? I had 3 words. I didn't say anything else.
Proud of you.
Rest of the podcast. It was so bad.
Oh my God. All right. Okay, so the next barrier is that you're not directed by values if you're passive, because your choices are driven by external validation or fear instead of inner guidance. And that's related to the pillar of directed by values. And then the last barrier is disembodiment, being disconnected from your body's cues, like your intuition, noticing any tension, energy shifts, which limits self-trust and the ability to be assertive. And that's related to the pillar of embodiment.
Damn. So it feels like, as someone who has dealt with difficult relationships in the past, and not just romantic relationships, I'm talking like all levels of relationships, or difficulty communicating directly in, social situations. In my mind, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I just don't have tools for being a good communicator.
Right.
But the reality is, no, you're just not fucking connected to yourself, girl.
I think it's both. Both.
Yeah, but I'm like, the number of times that I'm thinking back to like the version of myself that was married and trying to figure all these things out and listening to all the self-help, podcasts and reading all the self-help books. It's like, I absorbed all that information, but it was so fucking difficult every single time to have a conversation. And granted, the conversation with someone was an unhealthy person, so like that wasn't going to go anywhere anyways.
Yeah.
But I remember it just felt like I was trying to move entire walls to even get this information out of me, like into the universe, be able to use communication styles. But then when we're framing it now of like, okay, well, if you address the things within yourself, being connected to yourself, understanding your emotions and regulating all of that and being able to know exactly what you want and all of those things, when you're connected to those bits, it's clear. If you remove the barriers, then okay, the tools can actually be used. Yeah. So it's like you can study the tools all day long, but it's not going to help you if you're not self-centered.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that you said that, because that's the whole point that I'm trying to say is that, and this is how I feel about therapy and coaching too, is that the inside needs to be strengthened, like rearranged, right? And it's rearranged to become more you, right? It's not like it needs, the way that you need to change is to become someone you're not. It's the opposite. We want you to be your youest you. And once you can get there and you are self-centered and super connected to yourself sitting in your seat, then being assertive is kind of inevitable in a way. Like when you remove the barriers, I think about babies before they get socialized to use communication styles. They're just assertive. Crying is direct and clear and saying, this is what I want, this is what I need. And once they have the words, then they will use those to become even more clear. And it's only until they experience, no, you can't have that, or you're bad for asking for that, right? Or let's say then they become a toddler and they're emotionally dysregulated. Okay, well now there's an aggressive outburst, right? There's a toddler tantrum. And okay, that's because we're lacking emotion regulation. So you can see how as we develop and mature, if that continues and we don't get stuck in our development, and then we can fully mature and become self-centered, then yeah, I mean, like being assertive is second nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn. And it brings me back to, again, you guys need to go listen to the ego series if you haven't done this, but it brings me back to all of those different stages of development. Yes. Okay. When you're a baby, and then when you're a toddler, and then, you know, a small child, and then a teenager, and discovering a sense of self through all of that. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. If you missed a certain need in that period, oh yeah, you're going to struggle with this, that, or the other. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. It's just all making sense. It's all clicking.
Yay. I love it. I love every time you say that. And I feel like you're saying that more as we do more episodes, which is great because it makes sense that, okay, well, the episodes are puzzle pieces. So it makes sense that it's easier for it to be put together and show a bigger picture. And I'm so happy that that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's too. Awesome. I think the pillar of reciprocity in relationships, I think within that is learning what's okay and what's not okay in relationships. So I think that's the piece of the framework that is, yes, it's about us and being self-centered and being connected to ourselves, but it's also about understanding the social context, understanding other people, and understanding relationships and dynamics in relationships. And I think that's another piece that helps us to be assertive, because when we can make sense of someone's communication and the dynamics underneath it and what's actually happening, then we have the self-trust and the clarity to say, okay, well, this is what's happening and this isn't okay, versus when we're confused, it's really hard to take action and trust ourselves and be assertive.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's go to aggressive. Okay.
Rawr.
What?
It said rar. I said rar.
Rar. Katie's so tired today. That's your aggressive.
Rah. Okay, that's a little more.
Oh my gosh. In my head, it's like, be aggressive. You know?
Be aggressive. Yeah, no, I thought about that earlier too.
Yeah. All right. So what does being aggressive look like? You are expressing your thoughts and feelings, but you're doing it with real intense words and behavior. And you're not really filtering your words and behavior to make sense that it's kind and respectful. So it could be loud. You could be too physically close to the person and in their face. It could be posturing. So obviously there's physical aggressiveness, which can be part of this, but what we're really talking about more is verbal aggression here. When we think of aggressive communication, we tend to think of anger. Yeah. And you can be angry and assertive. So don't just associate you're aggressive if you're expressing anger, because that's not true. You can express anger assertively. But when we think of aggression and we think of what's being expressed, it's usually anger. It can also be hurt.
Yeah.
It can also be sadness. It can be kind of like a woe is me, I'm the victim. So this is really about being emotionally reactive, like very intense emotions that the person isn't processing or managing or regulating themselves. So it's spilling out all over you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you give in this scenario, this is what aggression would look like. Like, I know that people can envision what that looks like. And in my brain, it's like a red hot, fiery thing and it's, or a fight.
Yes.
But verbally, what might that sound like?
Yeah. Let me think about it. It's so hard because I don't have people like this in my life anymore. Well, I guess I have had some recent upset over the pod. Some people have been rigid out and they have been pretty emotionally reactive and angry. So, well, let me describe it a little more and then maybe I can come up with quotes. When we're aggressive, we're attacking someone's character instead of focusing on their behavior and the impact of that behavior. It's more, you're a loser, you're an asshole. Like those kind of things can be intimidating or belittling. So, you'll be sorry. You'll never find anyone like me, so you need to put up with this or whatever. Let's see.
As we can tell, podcaster, selfie friends, Allie and I are not aggressive communicators.
I used to be, though. I used to have aggression. Actually, that reminds me. So I was aggressive when I was younger. I would be passive and then I would get resentful and it would build up and I would just freak the fuck out. I would go ham on everyone and I would totally just cut someone down, attack their character. I would use everything that I know that they're insecure about themselves against them. Yeah. Here are some examples. I was actually thinking about this yesterday, 8, 9, 10 years ago. The relationship I was in, I remember we went on this. Well, we made it vacation, but it was on this destination wedding of one of his friends, and it was in a tropical place. So all his friends were there, and we had been dating for 6 months, and this was our first vacation together. And I remember he was basically making executive decisions. He was acting single. He wasn't communicating with me, checking in with me. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just remember saying to him, do you want to be single? Is that what you want? Because if you want to be single, you can be single. I'm fine with that. I'm not okay with you treating me like this. That's aggressive. That's intense. And that could have been said. It's unnecessarily intense, mean.
There's kind of a threat in there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
When someone's aggressive, they're puffing themselves up. They're they're making themselves bigger, and then the other person is less than or belittled. I think character is being attacked, whether it's implied or not, because the you want to be single, da 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 da. It's that's implying that you're acting single. That's wrong. Something's wrong with you. And if I were being assertive, that would sound like, hey, when you do XYZ for me in a relationship, I really would like you to handle it this way or communicate in this way. And that would feel really good to me. Does that work for you? If not, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, and
it's a lot of mocking too, I think.
I'm just trying to think of like you said, we don't have as many aggressive communicators in our life anymore intentionally.
Yeah, let me see. I can go find these recent emails. I mean, I don't have to give, identifying information at all, but let me go see. So I can't give too much context because it'll be identifying, but this is related to someone being upset about things I've said on the pod. So it says, as a therapist, this is pretty irresponsible, Allie. You are causing heavy pain to people that you say that you love. It sounds like they have held multiple meetings now on how to handle it, and I'm not aware what comes next. I mean, that's threatening.
Yeah.
And as a therapist, this is irresponsible. I mean, that's a character attack for sure. You're causing heavy pain. to people who you say you love, right? That implies you don't actually love them. You're doing something wrong here. I hope one day you realize how extreme yet unnecessary publicizing all this was. There's numerous other ways to help people with what you experienced. I really, really hope you find healing and clarity one day, Allie. Hurting your loved ones is never the answer.
Would you categorize some of that as passive aggressive?
Yeah, as I was reading it, that's
because it's like wrapped in like
yeah. Yes.
Like pleasantries, like the bless your heart from the South, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I would say that this is a mixture of aggressive and passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the beginning part of, as a therapist, this is pretty irresponsible. You're causing heavy pain to people that you say you love. These people are holding multiple meetings on how to handle this, and I'm not aware of what comes next. Like, that's aggressive. And this is an email, so we don't know what if this were in person, how loud they'd be or whatever. But right. I think that's a good example of how something that doesn't look overly dramatic or sound overly dramatic can still be aggressive because the message is aggressive. The message is unnecessarily mean, attacking your character. It's against the other person and trying to win or be right instead of being collaborative. There isn't equality assumed between the two people. It's this
equality, you said? It's
equality.
Equality. Okay,
yeah, like we're both on the same plane. It's like, I know better than you and you are less than or messed up. It's looking down on someone, being self-righteous. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good example. Let's see, before I move on, demanding something of someone without authority to do so. So you're not in a position of authority with that person. Being controlling, disrespecting limits and boundaries is aggressive. So even without saying anything, if you showed up at someone's house when they said, I don't want to see you anymore, or you kept calling someone when they said, I don't want to hear from you anymore, that's aggressive. So let's talk about the impact on the aggressive communicator when they're engaging in aggressive communication. So they're avoiding vulnerability because they're not directly sharing an unmet need that they have, right? So in that example I just shared of the email, I mean, I think it's aggressive to send the email to begin with because I think that person has no authority about the choices that I make. But I think if they did want to send an email, it could just be, hey, I just want to let you know that a lot of us are upset about this, and this is how we feel, and this is how this is impacting us.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share that with you for your consideration. That is vulnerable, though, because just saying, hey, this is really hurting us, or bringing up insecurities or making us feel bad about ourselves or guilty. I mean, that also, in order to do that, you would have to be aware of your emotions and be confident enough in yourself to be okay. Your ego would have to be strong enough to be able to say, I feel these things, and not have that make you feel bad about yourself.
Well, and it also, if someone was to do that and be vulnerable enough to share, this is how this is making me feel, it implicitly opens up a dialogue.
Yes.
That then could become more, oh, well, this is actually how all of these things impacted me, the other person on the other side of this fence, and why, I feel the way that I feel. And then you have to take responsibility for, look yourself in the eye and be like, oh, this is what happened.
Right. Yeah. And being vulnerable is more of putting yourself on an equal playing field. You're I'm human, but aggression, like I said, being aggressive is you're pumping yourself up.
Yeah.
So that you're looking down on someone, and that helps you avoid feeling vulnerable and feeling weak, right? Because a lot of people will associate acknowledging feelings. That's not weak, in my opinion. I think being self-centered is the strongest fucking thing you could do. I mean, we live in a world that is teaching you to not be self-centered. It's teaching you to abandon yourself, especially if you're a woman, basically, yes, if you are a cis, white, hetero man with a middle to upper class socioeconomic status, then you can center yourself. I mean, the whole fucking system exists to center you, right? And so, not saying individual people who meet that demographic are bad or anything. I'm just saying it's way easier for them to center themselves because there isn't any social resistance to that.
Yeah.
I mean, and if there is, it's coming from people with less power. Any of that resistance or frustration is coming from below them in terms of a hierarchy of power. And so if you are not that, then you are living in a world, in a system, in a culture that is actively telling you in many different ways to abandon yourself. Being self-centered is the strongest thing that you can do in that context, in my opinion. Recognizing your feelings is not weakness. Being vulnerable and acknowledging these things is not weakness at all. But a lot of people feel that it is because that's what we've been taught. So a lot of people who tend to be more aggressive are more likely to have internalized that you do have to avoid vulnerability. And that's why if you, in a split second, I said, imagine the face of someone who's aggressive, you're way more likely to think of a man because men are more likely to be taught, don't be weak, don't be this, all this fucking bullshit, right? How does being aggressive avoid vulnerability? Instead of being assertive and saying, here's my unmet need, or here's my unmet want, here's how I'm feeling, they avoid having to acknowledge anything about themselves and just attack the other person. So in those little excerpts from that email that I read, it's not, this is how we feel, like I said before, it's you're doing something wrong. This is irresponsible for a therapist to do. More impact of aggressive communication. It damages relationships. And at first, in the moment, it might feel good to vent and release your feelings, especially since you don't have emotion regulation skills to be able to process through it yourself. So you're like, what the fuck do I do with this? And so you vent them at the other person by this aggressive communication, but then later you feel guilty and you feel bad about yourself. And they're more likely to get their wants and needs met if you're aggressive than if you're passive, but you're doing it through force and intimidation and exploitation of other people.
Yeah.
Which, again, damages relationships.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get like a true intimate connection, which is what we really want and need in terms of quality of life and quality of relationships.
It just made me think of like the work that it takes to be vulnerable and intentional about your communication and communicating in an assertive way. It's a lot of front end work, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't end up having...
So that internal work.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And also the pause. I think about experiences where I've been really angry, like I've been offended by something or things that have happened to or towards me. And the moments where I've, in my mind, in my private experience, have wanted to, like, have envisioned reacting aggressively, like, fuck you, how dare you do this, that, or the other, it's fucked up. Like, that's the anger that builds up, right? If I was to act on that, just like you're saying, I'll walk away from that and be like, ah, shit, but I really shouldn't have gone off on that person like that. Like, they made a mistake, you know, and this doesn't create repair. Mm-hmm. Even if they apologize, it doesn't create repair. Mm-hmm. It's just created a wedge between us. And then I think about the times where, yes, I have been equally angry and equally upset about something. Mm-hmm. And I took the time to take a step back, to pause, to reflect, to see how I feel about it, what I need from it, what was the harm, what could have been done differently, and what I needed to communicate and how to say that in a direct way. Mm-hmm. And then I come to that person and I lay out my experience and I lay out like, this is what I needed and this is what I got and this is why it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And that, even though it took way more effort up front, walking away from that conversation, it's like you don't even remember the conversation anymore because it's resolved.
Yeah.
It feels like if you're with a healthy
the exception,
person,
it didn't become the rule.
Yeah, exactly. And that person was able to hear you, hopefully, you know.
I mean, and if not, it's good information so that it's an exception and not the rule for a different reason. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could start a whole nother piece of conversation.
I know. Katie's like, I'm keeping myself from saying it.
Well, I just mean it's good information. That bit, I forget that at times. Me personally, I can get so wrapped up in the why didn't they hear me? Why didn't they hear me? You know, or like this is so frustrating that this is still not validated or this is still not understood or that we're still not on the same page. And it's like, oh, hey, that's good information. They can't hear you.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, the reason that we stay passive is because we fear getting that information because we don't want to move on. So we would rather stay in avoidance.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's like what I don't know, what I don't acknowledge, I don't have to act on.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I do want to say before I forget, and this goes for passive communication too, these are only issues when we are overusing these communication styles. So it makes sense sometimes to be passive and it makes sense sometimes to be aggressive because you might need to do so for your safety. So if you are in an abusive situation and being assertive is going to put you in harm's way, stay fucking passive and get help. So that you can get to a safer situation. Same with aggression. If someone is being unsafe with you and you need to be like, no, get the fuck away from me in order to get them to go away, or even to just like puff yourself up and get enough adrenaline going so that you can fight them if you need to
protect yourself. Yeah.
Right. So we're just talking about chronic use where it's not effective. And this statement that I'm making about, okay, sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not, is exactly what we've talked about in other episodes about, guess what? There is no such thing as a completely bad coping skill. It's just, is it adaptive or not? Is it effective or not? And that depends on the context and the situation. So I want you to think of all of these things that we talk about as tools and just making sure that you're choosing the right tool for the situation. I don't want you to think about it as, well, this is a bad tool, so I'm never going to use it. Okay.
Such a good reminder.
So what dynamics are driving aggressive communication? Emotional dysregulation, again, just like with passive, except that instead of internalizing those emotions toward the self and suppressing the needs like you do when you have passive communication, those intense emotions, especially anger, are externalized. They leave you and you are putting them on other people, right? So with passive, you are suppressing your needs inside of you. That's the internalization. For aggressive, you are externalizing. So you're taking those emotions that you haven't been able to process, and instead of suppressing them, you are expressing them and over-expressing them.
Okay, so that's why the aggressive probably feels good in the initial, because you actually get the emotion out. Whereas the passive, you're burying it inside of you, and so it stays stuck. So there's no movement.
Yes.
Okay.
Passive communication, I would say, is more associated with depression. I mean, you can be aggressive and be depressed, but I think there's a lot more freeze response in passive, and where you feel stuck, you feel frozen, you feel exhausted. Whereas with aggression, you have a sense of power and you are expressing your feelings, which we know, according to research, when you express your feelings, you get less sick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, it feels better. And also from an evolutionary perspective, aggression makes sense when you think about animals and threats, right? And in communication with people, there's a lot that can feel like a threat, even though it's not actually a threat. But it's our more primitive, the brainstem and amygdala, the more emotional, older, ancestral parts of our brain are responding more like undomesticated animals, which is if there's a threat, be aggressive, protect yourself. So it also feels better for that reason. So these intense emotions are externalized without being processed, and control, blame, or intimidation are used to avoid vulnerability or perceived weakness, like we said. The social strategy here is, if I dominate or overpower in this interaction, then I'll stay in control and I won't get hurt or dismissed by that person. So I can avoid vulnerability by dominating. And then the belief that gets internalized about the self when aggressive communication is overused is my needs matter more than yours. And if I don't protect myself through force, I'll lose.
Feels very us versus them.
For sure.
Which doesn't make you equal.
Yeah. So none of these, other than assertiveness, you're not equal in any of these communication styles, because passive is you're less than. Aggressive is I'm better than you. I matter more than you. And passive aggressive is also I matter more than you. I'm just not going to tell you that I matter more than you. All right. So what are the barriers to assertiveness when you find yourself in aggressive communication? So lack of emotion regulation. Your reactive, explosive, or controlling behavior replaces calm, values-aligned expression because you are not able to regulate your emotions and express in a more grounded, balanced way. Also, you are disconnected from the needs beneath your anger. So your unmet needs are expressed as domination or blame or control rather than those vulnerable requests. And that relates to the pillar of needs ownership. Because often if you fear being vulnerable with others, you're also fearing being vulnerable with yourself, right? So you're probably alienated from yourself and repressing that stuff. Defense mechanisms abound. Okay. Weak ego and inflated false self. So there's this compensating for insecurity with force or superiority, and that often masks these deeper wounds. And that's related to ego awareness, that pillar. Lack of clarity of self. Identity is tied to power or dominance, not authentic self-connection. And that relates to clarity of self. Inability to tolerate vulnerability. Assertion, so being assertive, requires openness, and aggression defends against perceived weakness, right? So being open is vulnerable. And that has to do with embodiment and emotion regulation. When you're aggressive, you are not directed by your values. You are just driven by impulse, fear, pride, instead of integrity or mutual respect. And that's related to the pillar of directed by values. And then the last barrier is having distorted beliefs about control and safety. So you might see assertiveness as weak or ineffective and believe that only force gets results. And I would say that that's related to truthful communication and reciprocity in relationships, where you don't have the healthy view, or you haven't learned how relationships can look when they're healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. We ready for the last two?
Let's do it.
Passive aggressive. So what does that look like? It's everything we talked about just now with aggressive communication, except it's that aggressive message is wrapped in an unclear, indirect package. Sarcasm can be passive aggressive when it implies a harmful message rather than directly stating that message. And the unclear, indirect package helps the person avoid responsibility for the message. Because if a harmful message is wrapped in a joke, you can say it was just a joke.
Yeah.
Or I didn't mean it that way. It's like plausible deniability. Like you can't prove that I was deliberately trying to be mean. And people who overuse this communication style might go to being aggressive or being passive when they're held accountable. So what does it mean that people who overuse passive-aggressive communication will tend to go to aggressive communication or passive communication when they're held accountable? Well, here's an example. Let's say that a friend cancels plans with you last minute, and you respond, "No worries, I'm used to being the backup plan." That is
cringy.
Yeah. So if a friend wanted to hold you accountable, they could say, "Well, that's not how I feel, but let me know if you want to talk about it, because it sounds like you have some thoughts." And you might then go to passive communication and not say anything or ever bring it up again.
Or, oh, no, it was just a joke.
It was just a joke.
I was just kidding.
Yeah.
I was just kidding.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or they might go to an aggressive, I'm a victim here by saying, well, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You just don't want to tell me that you care more about this person than me.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So the reason that it's in an unclear indirect package is because this person is exceptionally fucking avoidant. And when you hold them accountable, they can't avoid anymore because you're basically saying, like, I'm going to acknowledge the message. Like, I'm taking the unclear wrapping off and I'm just saying, obviously, there's something here, right?
Yeah.
And they get upset about that. Or it could be a passive, well, I guess it would be an aggressive, actually, victim stance of, well, I'm actually really upset about it, but I understand that you have other plans that are more important than me. So if that's the case, then I guess I really know where I stand. I guess I really know what matters. You know what I mean? So, and that's more direct. That's more aggressive.
Yeah.
So you can see how this person regulates their emotions through avoidance. Well, they're not regulating their emotions. They're not fully processing them, but they're dealing with them through avoidance. And when that gets blocked and they have to actually, the other person acknowledges, well, you can't avoid this, then they get more dysregulated. And then that's how the passive or aggressive comes out. Okay. So that's a good little way to identify that for yourself, if you notice that. Okay. The impact on the communicator. Well, you are getting your feelings out to an extent. You are communicating in a way, or like expressing in a way, but it's obviously also harming the relationship. You might get what you need because the person, especially if they're passive and they're, you know, picking up what you're putting down, and they're like, oh, okay, this person wants this or whatever. They might do what you want, but you're never actually directly having any conversation. And so there's never any real connection or communication.
Yeah, and I just envision like the dynamic that creates in the relationship is people just walking on eggshells and never being able to actually say what they're feeling or say like overthinking decision making because, oh, well, they might take it this way or the other, even though that's not what I intend at all. And so then you're not acting authentically. And then the relationship is just, I don't know, feels like a mirage. It's not real.
Yeah. If you're passive aggressive, you're also less likely to actually really know your feelings because you're not just blurting out and being mean about something. So you're not making clear. So everything is just confusing.
Yeah.
For you, for the other person and the relationship. Passive aggression, also similar to aggression, avoids vulnerability by making their unmet need about the other person. So let's move on to the dynamics driving passive aggression. Okay, so emotional dysregulation, just like with the other two. Emotions are suppressed and not truly processed. And that leads to this indirect expression of emotions like sarcasm, guilt tripping, and the body holds the tension and resentment leaks out. Right. So I think with passive aggression, there's this sense of simmering anger. I think there's more of like explosions and then feels okay. Explosions and then feels okay. Whereas with passive aggression, the emotions being suppressed and unprocessed and just kind of like there in this like blah foggy way is just like this energy in this dark cloud that I think just like moves around with the person, and then you can kind of feel that around them as well. The social strategy for passive aggressive communication is if I express my needs directly, I'll be rejected or punished. So I'll release them in ways that feel safer or less confrontational. And the rejection and punishment could be that they perceive might happen, could be from the other person, but it also might be from themselves because they might have internalized a really critical part based on experiences in their life. When you overuse passive-aggressive communication, the belief that you internalize about yourself is my needs matter, but it's not safe to say them out loud. So I'll hint, I'll manipulate, or I'll withdraw instead. It's like this stealthy, like, ugh.
To anyone who is a passive-aggressive, sarcastic communicator, I'm sorry you didn't really have a safe space.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more pain there. Or I should say not more pain, but pain that's been really pushed down.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably there's depression, there's anxiety, there's rage, there's just so much going on here simmering. And you deserve to work through that so you don't have to feel like that anymore, and you can have relationships where you actually have intimacy and can connect.
Yeah.
All right, barriers to assertiveness for you if you are passive aggressive. Fear of conflict, rejection, or direct confrontation. Emotions are expressed indirectly to avoid perceived danger. Pillars related to that: emotion regulation and needs ownership. Another barrier is lack of truthful communication. There's difficulty saying how you really feel, which leads to sarcasm, silent treatment, or manipulation. Also related to truthful communication pillar. Internalized shame or guilt. You suppress your needs and suppress expression of your needs, and that relates to ego awareness. No clear ownership of your needs. You expect others to guess or meet your needs without directly asking. So that's the passive part, right? Because we heard that for the passive communication as well. That's related to needs ownership. Disembodiment and dysregulation. You never actually get to fully or constructively release these feelings that are in your body. And you're not connecting to them, and then they just kind of like come out, leak out. So that's related to embodiment and emotion regulation.
It reminds me of like a tea kettle.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you the little screaming sound.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, assertive, yay. This is what we want. Okay, what does assertiveness look like? Looks like direct, clear communication. It looks like asking for what you want and need and saying no to what you can't or don't want to do. It's being honest with yourself, being honest with other people, and not being unnecessarily mean, right? Like, so you're just like, oh, you're sharing the facts and you're removing what is unnecessarily hurtful. And I talk about this concept of reporting the weather, which is that sometimes you do have to say things or give feedback that instead of talking about a sunny day, you're sharing, okay, I'm noticing this dark cloud, and the dark cloud is you. And that person might be like, oh, that is hard to hear. Even though it's hard to hear, you're not sharing it to be mean. You're sharing it because this is feedback that they need. It might be hard for them to hear that they hurt you, for example. That's still really important information. And so you're still going to share it because you're not responsible for their feelings. They're responsible for their feelings. And you got to report that weather. So you are honest with yourself and others. You set and hold boundaries. You respect boundaries. You are fair. You focus on other people's behavior and the impact of that behavior, and you can make requests around that behavior or let them know that you will be removing yourself or your attention or your engagement if they engage in that behavior. All that is fine. You are not focusing on their character, though. I mean, you can if you're saying positive things. I mean, that's fine. Like if you say, I know you're a really loving person and this behavior hurt me, so I'm sharing it with you because I know you're a loving person and you would want to know if it hurt me because you don't want to hurt me. So, but you wouldn't unnecessarily be like, you're a fucking bitch. You know? And then you're usually making eye contact. You're confident. You have an open posture. Again, go listen to our episode on boundaries because there's a lot on assertiveness in there too. All right. So what is the impact on the assertive person when they're being assertive? Well, it protects your peace without sacrificing your truth. It builds self-respect because you are engaging in values alignment by being honest in your communication. It also strengthens your relationships because it fosters mutual respect and clarity. You're on the same page. It reduces resentment by addressing issues before they fester and get worse. Helps you meet your needs directly rather than hoping that other people will guess. It increases confidence and emotion regulation over time as you are assertive. It reinforces your sense of identity and self-worth. It creates consistent, sustainable boundaries that support long-term well-being. Requires courage in the moment, but in the long run, it brings ease and integrity into your interactions. And last but not least, it cultivates trust in yourself and in others because you're showing up honestly. When you are assertive with people with weaker egos, on the weaker side of the ego spectrum, they are more likely to perceive it as aggressive.
Okay.
So when you are direct in asking for what you want or you need, or sharing the impact of how their behavior has impacted you, they will feel attacked, aka that it's aggressive. When you're reporting the weather, and it's important if there's a storm and the weather might hurt the both of you to say, yo, let's actually do something different here because we don't want to both get struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Yep. So what are the dynamics driving assertiveness? You're emotionally regulated. Yay. You know how to process your emotions. You can acknowledge your emotions. You can express your emotions, and you can do that clearly. Your nervous system can tolerate discomfort, and that's what makes honest communication possible. So when you are emotionally regulated, that does not mean you're not feeling strong emotions. It does not mean you're not feeling uncomfortable, right? You can feel strong anger, strong sadness. You can feel scared. You can feel really uncomfortable, but you can hold that. You can tolerate it and have that conversation. The social strategy for assertiveness is if I speak my truth with clarity and care, I protect my peace, I honor my needs, and I create healthier relationships. And when you are assertive over time, the belief that you internalize about yourself is my needs and boundaries matter, and so do yours. I can be true to myself and connected to others at the same time. People listening might hear this and say, well, if your needs matter and their needs matter, then how can you set boundaries if they need you to do something that you can't do and you need to set a boundary around? So I want to address that. Your needs and your boundaries are primary, right? Because you are in charge of taking care of you. And I have been in relationships where the expectation is, I mean, this isn't stated. I don't think it's conscious either. But it's basically, if I need something, you need to take care of me. And if you need something, I'll take care of you. But that's just two people abandoning themselves and letting go of responsibility for taking care of themselves, right? And what we really want is, well, no, it's my responsibility to take care of me and protect me, protect my needs, have boundaries. And if I can help you and if I can meet your needs while staying in my seat, I will. But if I can't, I won't.
Yeah.
And your needs still matter. I hope that you can get those met. But I can't help you because if I leave my seat, I'm going to be off balance. And if something else happens in my life, it's going to just smack me down.
Yeah.
So you really need to prioritize yourself.
I would add to that too, that part of the conversation is also, okay, yes, my needs matter and I need to prioritize myself. And if I can, I'll help you if it doesn't take me out of my seat. And a compatibility conversation is, do our needs cause each other harm?
Yes. Yep.
And if they cause each other harm, again, it's a compatibility issue. Neither one of you should be in that relationship, friendship, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't make sense. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. It's just, hey, there's other people for us.
Yeah, I actually just had a session with a client today where she just had a breakup, and she said, well, who's the mature one and who's the immature one in the breakup? Is it me or them? And like, who's right and who's wrong kind of thing. Yeah. And I was like, I actually think both of you are emotionally mature. I just think you're not compatible.
Yeah.
And she was like, whoa. But I think that the way, like, I completely understand that way of thinking, because I think that's what I think our culture tends to be more likely to be like, whose fault was it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whereas it could just be a compatibility thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So good to say. Okay. So instead of barriers to assertiveness, because you're being assertive, what helps you be assertive is the centered framework. So I'm just going to quickly say how it helps with that. So clarity of self, knowing your values, boundaries, and preferences allows for confident self-expression, because you're like, yeah, I know who I am. I know what I need. I'm confident in that. Then emotion regulation, that allows you to feel your emotions without being overwhelmed, and that creates space for intentional, non-reactive communication, which is assertiveness. Needs ownership is recognizing and honoring your own needs without guilt or shame, which makes it easier to express them directly. Truthful communication, expressing yourself honestly, even when it's vulnerable, fosters authentic connection. Embodiment, staying connected to your body and its signals, noticing your intuition, any tension, changes in energy. It helps you recognize when something feels right or it feels wrong. Mm-hmm. Reciprocity in relationships, expecting mutual respect and shared responsibility reinforces healthy dialogue and boundary setting. So if you understand healthy dynamics, then that allows you to feel more confident setting those boundaries. Ego awareness, a strong, flexible sense of self, reduces defensiveness and allows for both confidence and humility. And then last, directed by values, being guided by what matters most to you rather than fear or approval leads to integrity in how you speak and act.
Yeah.
And to end, I just have a few journal prompts that can help you. So I'm just going to read those, and then we're going to wrap it up. This will help with clarity of self and needs ownership. What are 3 needs that I often ignore, minimize, or hope others will just notice? Why is it hard for me to express them directly? What would it look like to honor those needs with clarity and care? Journal prompt 2 is around emotion regulation and truthful communication. When I feel uncomfortable or upset in a conversation, what do I typically do? Do I shut down? Do I lash out? Do I drop hints? Or do I stay silent? What emotion is beneath that reaction? And what would be a more honest, self-respecting response? Then there's ego awareness and directed by values. When I think about being assertive, what stories come up? Do I worry I'll be too much, that I'll be seen as selfish, or I'll be disliked? Whose approval am I afraid of losing? What value do I want to lead with instead? What value of mine? What belief do I want to lead with? Like maybe my approval is what matters most, for example, but you might have others. And then last but not least, embodiment and reciprocity in relationships. Journal prompts for that are, what signals does my body give me when something feels off in a conversation or dynamic, but I ignore or override them? What would it look like to honor those signals and only invest in relationships where mutual respect and care are present? So the way that you communicate isn't just a habit. It's also a mirror that shows your emotional patterns, your level of self-worth, and where your nervous system is in terms of your ability to regulate and process your emotions. And Assertiveness is a skill that you can grow with practice. That's why we talk about this, because you can identify where you are, you can become more assertive, and that is going to help you center yourself even when it's hard. And when you center yourself, it's how you build a life where you aren't just heard, you're surrounded by people who you're compatible with, who you can have reciprocal, mutual relationships with.
The biggest takeaways that I have from this episode, the work starts within you, and it starts within how you experience yourself and how you are existing within your own world. I mean, it's not just the tools of the words that you say. It's what are the underlying beliefs and patterns and maturities.
Yeah.
And maybe even the past that you've experienced that have created a habit of, okay, well, I've previously dealt with people who don't receive direct communication well, so I've become passive, or I've previously disregarded my needs and I don't believe that I am of equal value to someone else, so I become passive, or I believe that I'm better than other people, so I become more aggressive, or people don't hear me, so I become passive aggressive. And recognizing those patterns, recognizing what's going on internally for you, that's where the work starts to improve and level up your communication. You can have all the tools in the world in terms of, I'll say like I versus you statements or whatever. Like you can have all those in the world, but if you don't have the internal work, those aren't going to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. I'm just thinking about, as you were talking, I was like, oh, you mean like psychological dynamics, like psychodynamics? That those
like
are
the things that we just spent a whole fucking
yeah,
month on?
I love it. I've made you into a little like, I don't know. I'm like hoping I'm turning everyone on to psychodynamic ways of thinking because yes, this is why I always say skills are important, like cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. It's
but
important.
If they don't feel aligned, that's the thing. Like if you don't have the underlying framework within yourself, the skills aren't going to be like the first thing you reach for.
It just doesn't feel right. Yeah.
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 And so you're going to forget that you have them and you're going to lash out first.
Yup. So if any of you have a therapist where you're like, why isn't this working? And they just say, just use the skills, try harder. There's probably something missing. And this is why we therapists shop. Because there are some therapists who people have been self-centered and they have that foundation that they need. And then something just happened in their life that they need to talk through and maybe learn some skills. So cool, that works. But you might need to go a little deeper. We will see y'all next week.
We love
it. Bye. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.